funds, and I can guarantee you at least one thing here today. Someone in this town hall gathering has unclaimed funds. And so the office is here. All you've got to do is give them your name and some address information, and they might be able to determine that you have some checks that are owed to you that you can collect on. They'll also give you the information to regularly check that as well. That's the Office of Unclaimed Funds. Some of that $9 billion is in our community, and we want to make sure that that money gets to you. And so, without further ado, because we promised to try to expedite everything given the heat that we are experiencing, at first I want to introduce Guillermo Cruz, who is the Associate Commissioner of the Bureau of Community Services for DFTA, which is the agency most responsible in New York City for interacting with our seniors. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good afternoon to everyone, and again, I am really pleased to see you and attending our event despite the heat. So, not an easy day to be outdoors. We found out at the Department for the Aging just yesterday about the event, and we discussed it in one of our meetings, and then somebody says, well, we should just politely decline. And then our commissioner, Commissioner Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, says, we don't say no to Hakeem Jeffries. So we're very happy to be here, even on short notice. And all I just wanted to do was just to make sure that you're acquainted with the services of the New York City Department for the Aging. As the Congress member said, we are the area agency on aging. We are the largest AAA, as we would be called, in the United States. And I just wanted to give you a quick overview because I know we want to be brief, but just that our services include 249 senior centers. We serve 18,000 home delivered meals each day. Actually, in the pandemic, that has increased. Our senior centers were closed for congregate services, for in-person services most of the year because of the pandemic, obviously, and they're starting to reopen. So those of you who want to reconnect, if you haven't, because they've been closed, physically closed, even though they've been providing virtual services, etc. If you want to reconnect with your senior center, older adult centers, they're also called. Please do so. You can call to our Aging Connects number, 212-AGING-NYC, if you want to get information about your local senior center that's close to your local senior center. In addition to home delivered meals and the senior centers provide lunches, as you well know, as you may know, congregate meals, sometimes breakfast, sometimes dinner, education, recreation activities, case assistance. This year, because of the pandemic, there's been an increase in virtual programming. So seniors with smartphones have been able to engage, or there's also telephonic services also that have been provided by the senior centers. And I'm just going to give you a quick rundown because I want to be brief. Some of the other services we run, for example, there's a health insurance information counseling and assistance program, HICAP as we would call it, and that's for counseling for Medicare, the different parts of Medicare. There's also, we have a legal assistance component. We have New York Connects, which helps with long-term care planning. There's also a senior employment arm that we have, where we provide training and interviewing skills, et cetera, to older adults. There's also social adult daycare services for frailer and sometimes cognitively impaired seniors, older adults. There's a bill payer program that helps certain seniors with their bill paying and maintaining their finances. There's caregiver services, as was mentioned before, which is a largely overlooked group of individuals. Sometimes the caregivers don't even identify themselves as a caregiver, and they're providing services, helping an older adult who might be frail or in need of help, or a young member of a community who is also in need of services. There's also case management, elder justice. There's a foster grandparents program for volunteers, a friendly visiting program where visits are made to keep in contact with certain seniors. There's a geriatric mental health component, which is installed in various senior centers to provide mental health assistance. And there's also the Grandparent Resource Center. So I don't want to belabor this, and I just want to thank you again for attending and listening to my very brief presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Guillermo. Now we'll have some opportunity, if you've got some general questions to ask of any of the panelists, to write down those questions, and we'll try to get to some questions in advance of the top of the hour at 6. If you've got specific issues that you need assistance on that relates to you personally or a family member or loved one, I would just ask that you hold on that question and save it to ask any of us when we convene the formal aspect of the panel presentations. Next up, we've got Kenneth Charles, who's a senior advisor for the Human Resources Administration. It's an agency I know well. My mother worked for HRA for 45 years. As a result of what HRA does, there's a whole host of funding programs, assistance programs for people who are in need that people in the community aren't often aware of. And so we wanted to make sure, particularly as people continue to struggle through this pandemic, that we had HRA present in order to talk about some of the programs that people can take advantage of that you may not have otherwise been aware of heading into this presentation. Let's give him a round of applause. Kenneth Charles, thank you.
Good afternoon. Good to be 10 minutes from home when I'm out. HRA, as you know, is the agency that sort of oversees a lot of the funding, a lot of the assistance to New York City. We have over 3 million clients. We do Medicaid, SNAP, one-shot deals for utilities as well as rent. But what I want to concentrate on, since this is a senior event, is Medicaid and SNAP. The reason why I want to concentrate on those is that I am the person responsible. One of my hats is that I interact with elected officials, and a lot of the calls that they get from seniors is that they'll show up at a doctor's office and their Medicaid card is not working. Their Medicaid card has expired. And I am a sucker for seniors. They should not have to go through that trauma of not knowing, A, that their Medicaid is off, and B, how do I get it back on? So one of the things that I want to get across to everyone, make sure if there's a senior in your life that you stay up on their Medicaid recertification. Which does that mean? You have to recertify every X amount of years, although we automatically recertified a bunch of folks during the pandemic, but that's running out. So please be aware of the senior in your life, their Medicaid certification, so that they don't have to go through the trauma of wondering, if their Medicaid will ever come back on, because that's what happens when you're a senior. You know, you think that you're not too sure about the fixable part of the government. So I want, and sometimes I get the call from the senior themselves, and it's just sad because we will help them, because I will make sure they get help. But the first thing I tell them is relax, because we got you, I got you. So they don't have that pressure of worrying about their Medicaid. That's the first thing. So the other program where seniors have issues with is SNAP. Not the application process, because a lot of times the facilitated enrollers help them apply. But the recertification process in SNAP is another one that sometimes seniors miss. And what happens is they're expecting their SNAP to be there, and then they'll show up at the grocery store after picking up food and get to the counter and realize the SNAP card, they didn't get any SNAP for that month. So once again, I'm asking you to make sure that that SNAP recertification is part of any senior in your life, that you just ask them about it. It's just grandma, grandpa, ma, dad, whatever it is. Do you have SNAP, and when is your recertification? There's an app now, but I try to tend to make sure the seniors have a person they can talk to, because the app for we older folks is sometimes challenging. So make sure that we ask folks, A, if their SNAP is working, and B, how do you recertify? I was going to discuss some ERAP, but there's an expert on the panel she said she'll do it. So for seniors, I think my number one issue is Medicaid and SNAP. And if you need me, I will give you my number. My number is not in the HRA bureaucracy, so it's directly to me at the end of the event, and I will be more than happy to help you with any HRA issue, no matter what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. One of the big issues that all of us in Brooklyn face is the high cost of housing, and the fact that we, of course, are in the midst of a affordable housing crisis, a displacement crisis. One of the things we hope to be able to do in Washington with some of the investments that we're making in infrastructure is to invest in a meaningful way in the creation, renovation, and preservation of affordable housing. And that work has to be done. Some of it will be done this month, but we are going to try to do it in a transformative way. At the same time, before that additional assistance comes, we know that there are people right now facing skyrocketing rents, increasing rents. And when you're on a senior who is on a fixed income, that can be particularly difficult for you to handle. And I think it's a shame that we've got seniors, and I grew up here in Brooklyn on Sterling between New York and Nostrand with my grandma on Putnam and Lewis, in the middle of the crack cocaine epidemic in the mid to late 80s into the early 90s. And we still got some quality of life challenges that we have to deal with, but we know we've come a long way from that point. And now we've got people coming in, which is not a bad thing, from all over the city, the state, the region, the country, and the world. But it should not come at the expense of those seniors who help to turn things around in communities like Bedford-Stuyvesant, and now are at risk of becoming victims of your own success. We are not going to let that happen to you and to our families. And so there are some programs that currently exist to help out seniors as it relates to freezing their rent in place, or those with disabilities, freezing your rent in place, and also to help out senior homeowners who are feeling the pressure of increasing property tax payments. And so in that regard, I'm so pleased that Michael Sharp has joined us. He's the outreach liaison from the New York City Department of Finance. Thank you, Michael, for being here.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for coming and for having us here today. I'm going to speak to you briefly about two different categories of programs. First, programs for individuals who rent, and then secondly, for homeowners. Now, in the matter of those who rent, there are two programs that the Department of Finance administers. It's called rent freeze in general, but you may know of it as SCREE or DREE. It's the Senior Citizen Rent Increase Exemption, or the Disabled Individual Rent Increase Exemption. And we're going to mention the qualifications and how one would apply, but as you hear this information, you may think that, well, it doesn't apply to me. But please pause for a moment, because there's someone in your life, friend or family member, who likely will qualify for the benefits that I'm about to describe. For the rent freeze program, if you live in a rent stabilized, rent regulated apartment, rent control apartment, or rent regulated hotel unit, you are 62 years of age or older, or an individual with a disability, your household income is below $50,000. That means when we calculate all of the income within those that live in your home, it's below $50,000, and that's a lot of us. And you're spending 1/3 of your monthly income towards your rent. In other words, if there's $3,000 of income, you're paying at least $1,000 in rent, then you may qualify for this program. Now you may say, well, I think we're over $50,000. Two of us work. I have a young child that started to work. We calculate maybe a little bit different than you do. We're going to deduct state, local, and federal taxes from that income and then calculate that. So don't let the numbers put you off just yet. And so with those qualifications, you can apply. It's a simple application. You'll provide proof of your identity. You'll provide your lease, your current lease and your previous lease. You will also send proof of income. If you're a senior in Social Security, that would be that 1099 statement or a tax return. And with a 3-page application, you may find that your rent is frozen where it is for the duration of the time that you live in that apartment. And many of our seniors want to do just that. They want to age in place. So think of someone for whom that may qualify. There are a lot of details to it. We're not going to go into it here, but that's the basic requirement. For homeowners, there are several different programs that can help freeze your rent, not freeze your rent, but lower your taxes. And let me just say one more thing about the rent freeze program. Some of you may be in the program already. This also requires renewal. Every time you have a new lease, you must renew. Many of our seniors or program participants have not done that through the pandemic. So if you know of anyone, please encourage them to renew. It's the way to stay in the program and keep that cost of rent down. Now for homeowners, there are about 6 different tax exemptions that we administer. If you are a senior, if you are a person with a disability, if you are a veteran, a member of the clergy, or even someone who owns a home and their income is under $250,000 a year, you may qualify for some form of tax exemption. There's also a co-op and condo abatement that applies to those that own condos and co-ops. If your building qualifies, you may be able to reduce your tax burden for that unit between 17 and 28%, which is translated in many cases to your maintenance. So these are some of the basic programs. We will be here to answer questions in more detail. But if you only come away with one thing from my presentation, may it be this, that think of someone in your life who may qualify for this and encourage them to enroll. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And just to reemphasize that point, as he said, somebody in your life, many people who are here, but somebody in your life qualifies for a lot of these programs, and they may not be taking advantage of them. And we want to make sure we've got 100% participation in our community. That's why we wanted to hold this event today, but we will continue to get this information out in a sustained way. And I know many community partners, I see my good friend Dee Bailey, will continue to work closely to get that done as well. Two more presentations, and then we'll have time for a few questions, and then we'll be able to informally talk to everyone about any issues that you may have. Next, I'm so pleased that Ellen Davison has joined us from the Legal Aid Society. She's a staff attorney with the Civil Practice Law Reform Unit, and she's here to talk about the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that we fought hard to provide resources to, so that people who are struggling with rent through the pandemic aren't at risk of being eventually evicted because of an inability to pay. And Ellen has been helping to lead the charge with the Legal Aid Society to make sure that our community members participate in the rental assistance program that's available. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk rent relief. You know, when the pandemic came and New York was at the epicenter, people were in the hospitals, going into crowded places was a death sentence. People died. Actually, in Kings County, 2 judges died from sitting on the bench. It became very, very clear that we had to close down housing court. We had to figure out a way to keep people in their homes. And the governor, the courts, and the legislature came together to put together an eviction moratorium, a law that said you can't move forward with evictions. But that doesn't mean rent didn't continue to come due. And with the pandemic came a huge financial crisis. We used to talk about what happened in 2008 as being an historic financial crisis, and yet we find ourselves in a situation where at one point last summer, New York City's unemployment rate was 20%. And we're still not back to where we were beforehand. And so many, many people have been struggling to pay rent. And so we, after trying to make sure we could keep people housed, because housing is healthcare, went to our partners in the federal government, Senator Schumer, Congressmember Jeffries, and we said, we need help. It's the federal government has to come in and address this and provide us with rent relief. And in 2 bills that were passed, one in December, one in March, they provided $45 billion for the nation, $2.6 billion which came to New York State. Our state legislature designed a program, and in June, the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance opened the program for people to apply for rent relief. So let's start with what it is. If you owe your landlord rent, you can apply for ERAP. In order to be eligible, you need to be low income, which means your income is under 80% of AMI. Second, you need to show that you had a COVID-related financial hardship. And that can be shown in 2 different ways. It's either I had income before, I don't have income now, or you can show it by showing that your expenses went up significantly because of the pandemic. And if you have those things, owing rent, low income, and had a COVID-related financial hardship, you can apply for the program. What you are applying for is up to 12 months of back rent owed. And if you are rent burdened, if you pay more than 30% of your income toward your rent, you can ask for 3 months of future rent to be paid. So how do you apply? Well, you know, we live in a pandemic world, so sadly, the entire application is online, which has been challenging for people. I don't want to sugarcoat it. You have to go to the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. On the front page, it says you want to apply for ERAP. You can click. the buttons and you can apply for, do the online application. Because the application is difficult, the city, New York City has contracted with community-based organizations to help people who need help with this application. And as the Congress member mentioned, Black Vets for Social Justice, Veterans for Social Justice, they have their hands up. Well, now, yeah, they have their hands up in the back. They are one of the official enrollers. They are there to help people in this community apply for this application. So please apply. There's plenty of money left. It's a $2.6 billion program. So far they've given out $100 million. So it's not closed. You can do it at any time. Please tell your neighbors. I will say I get that the program is challenging. We get calls all the time. On the other hand, we have clients who've received rent relief. So it can be done. So please apply. If you apply for this program, your landlord can't move forward with an eviction case until you've received your rent relief. So it's going to provide protection and keep people in their home as they try to stop the eviction case. Because New York State's eviction moratorium ends at the end of August. So the only way to make sure that you get to stay is you apply for this program. And I'm sure people may have questions, and I hope they write them down and we can talk more in depth about it. But apply, apply, apply. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I just want to acknowledge the presence of Nan Blackshear, who I believe is here. Nan, you want to stand up? She's the Director of Community Affairs for the Office of Borough President Eric Adams. And Nan, thank you for being here. Our boss is about to get a promotion, so you may be relocating with him. But thank you for being here representing the Office of the Borough President. Last, certainly not least, we're thankful for the presence of FEMA, just to talk about a very unique program that I wish someone knew a congressman who could do something about those flight patterns, but during the pandemic, we know there's been a lot of pain and suffering and death that has been experienced across America. More than 600,000 people have died. This is an extraordinary number. It's more than World War I and II and the Vietnam War and the Korean War, the war in Iraq, and the war in Afghanistan combined in terms of the number of Americans who have passed away. And we know that here in New York City, during the early stages of the pandemic, we were ground zero. And as a result of the financial hardship that has been caused, we know that many people struggled in terms of being able to pay funeral or cremation or burial expenses. And so, as part of the American Rescue Plan, we created a grant, not a loan, a grant assistance program that could reimburse you for costs that you may have incurred in connection with burying or funeralizing a loved one who passed of COVID-19. And here to talk about the specifics of that program is Kimberly Grisham from FEMA. Thank you for being here.
Hi, good afternoon. As the Congressman said, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought overwhelming grief to many families. And at FEMA, our mission is to help people before, during, and after disasters. And we're dedicated to helping to ease the financial stress and burden caused by this virus. So thank you, Congressman Jeffries, and thank you for being here in this heat to hear us talk about this program. Under the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, as well as the American Rescue Plan Act, FEMA is providing financial assistance for COVID-19 related funeral expenses incurred after January 20, 2020. You may qualify for this funeral assistance if you are a U.S. citizen, non-citizen national, or qualified alien who incurred funeral expenses on or after January 20, 2020 for an individual whose death occurred within the United States including our U.S. territories and the Washington, D.C., and the death may have been caused by or is likely the result of COVID-19. Funeral expenses may be reimbursed up to a maximum of $9,000 per decedent, or if you have been responsible for multiple decedents, FEMA will reimburse up to a maximum of $35,500 per registration per state or territory. To apply, you must first call our dedicated hotline at 844-684-6333, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. When you call, they'll take about 20 minutes to begin your application, and you can ask any questions and they can help you get started. Once you've called and have your FEMA application number, you'll be asked to submit your documentation, either by uploading to a disasterassistance.gov account or by fax or mail. For your documentation, you will need to submit a copy of the death certificate, which must indicate that the death can be attributed to COVID-19. The only exception for this is for deaths that occurred from January 20 to May 16, 2020 in the early months of the pandemic. Between these dates, any death certificate that does not attribute the cause of death to COVID-19 must be accompanied by a signed statement by either the certifying official listed on the death certificate, the local medical examiner, or local coroner, which provides an explanation or causal pathway that links the cause of death on the death certificate to COVID-19. The applicant must also provide proof of funeral expenses, which shows that the applicant themselves was responsible for the funeral expenses for the decedent and that these costs were incurred after January 20, 2020. Lastly, the applicant must provide proof of any insurance or other funeral benefits received. FEMA may not duplicate any other burial or funeral insurance proceeds, as well as any financial assistance received from another source. We encourage everybody who thinks that they may be eligible or who may know somebody who's eligible to apply. If you have any questions, we do have a table at the back. We also have a hub site at Medgar Evers College where we can provide more hands-on assistance with your application. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And just to reiterate again, if you lost someone as a result of COVID-19, you may be eligible for up to $9,000 in assistance that can reimburse expenses that you incurred, or, God forbid, if you have a loved one that passes and we'll have to deal with the financial consequences of that passing as well moving forward. We want to make sure that we're there for you. There was something that was mentioned in the context of the eligibility, which you'll have to provide proof of if there was funeral assistance or burial assistance. There's an important distinction, however, where if you had life insurance connected to a loved one and used the proceeds from that life insurance, not funeral insurance or burial insurance, but life insurance, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you would still be eligible to receive reimbursement for any expenses that you incurred.
Yes, that's correct. That life insurance is not considered a duplication. Only the funeral or burial insurance is considered a duplication. You may use life insurance and still receive up to the $9,000.
And that's up to $35,000 if you experience multiple deaths in your family. So let's just give all the panelists a round of applause. As I indicated, help is not simply on the way, help is here. And as we approach the top of the hour, and I wanted to keep it to within an hour because of the heat, which is expected not to decrease but increase, we do have a few questions of a general nature that I just wanted to make sure we got to, and then we'll be around, of course, to handle any individual issues that you may have once we conclude the formal part of the program. But this is a question that I think I can direct to Michael from the Department of Finance. Can you reiterate the eligibility criteria for the property tax assistance program, because as you articulated, it extends beyond seniors, includes but is not limited to seniors. And this is a general policy question which you may not be able to answer, but are there any plans for a freeze or assistance generally to reduce property taxes?
Well, I'll take the first question. I'll just reiterate some of these things for property taxes. The STAR benefit, which is the first one I mentioned, that was income below $250,000. That's a household income. That's actually administered by the state, and it's worth about $300 to a homeowner. There's something called Enhanced STAR, which is for individuals who are 65 years of age and over. Household income is $88,050 or less. There is a senior citizens homeowner exemption. The income there would be $58,399, and the age would be 65 and above. The disabled homeowner, the same thing. You don't have an age requirement there, but the income is the same, $58,399 or below. For the veterans benefit, there is no income or age requirement, but they will have had to serve during certain times of conflict, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf, Persian War. There is a clergy exemption, and this one is for, all of these benefits are for residences within the 5 boroughs, except the clergy exemption, which could apply to a home that you have in New York State. And this can reduce your taxes by about another $300. You would have to be an active member of the clergy and using this as part of your vocation or your main source of vocation. If I could just go back to the senior citizens homeowner and the a disabled homeowner exemption, depending on your income, it can reduce your property taxes between 5 and 50%. So if your income is $50,000 or less, it starts at $58,399, and then there's a sliding scale. If it goes to $50,000 or below, the property taxes can actually be cut by 50%. And with these exemptions, it's not just one. You can have as many as you qualify for. So by all means, you should look into that. As far as a general freeze or on taxes or some sort of hold on tax, I haven't heard anything to that in that area. That would be a legislative thing and not something that's just policy of the Department of Finance. But I just encourage everyone to, let's say, go to the website or take the information here today and look into what you may qualify for.
Thank you, Michael. I'll direct this question to Ellen. Can you speak about any plans that exist to help small homeowners receive mortgage assistance as a result of challenges that emerged during the pandemic, since there appears to be a heavy focus on tenants and rent payments?
Let me just first start by saying I'm a tenant attorney, so my knowledge about the programs is not great. But as I understand it, the federal government did provide assistance to help people, small homeowners, with mortgage payments, and that money went directly to the state Division of Housing and Community Renewal. They have not opened up the program yet, but they are in the process of standing up that program, and they're going to have an application process which they are assuring us, for what it's worth, will be as simple as possible. They're looking to open that up, I believe, in September. So I'm sure as soon as it comes up, it will be publicized. but I'm sure any of your elected officials will have the information so they can get the word out about that program.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. I think it's important to note that the current program, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, is designed to make sure we keep residents in their apartments, in their units, in their homes, but also ensure that that back rent that is owed is given to the landlords, many of whom are small landlords who we know have challenges perhaps paying their mortgage in the absence of receiving the rental assistance. And that's why, as part of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, it's a joint application between both the landlord as well as the tenant. And then, as Ellen indicated, in addition to the $2.6 billion that we fought for New York State in rental assistance, we also were able to secure over $500 million in assistance specifically for homeowners, to help homeowners who have been struggling in paying their mortgage be able to do so. And the reason why we don't have anyone from the state here today to discuss that program is because, as Ellen indicated, it's not up and running yet. But we expect that it will within the next 30 days, and we certainly will be communicating that information to everyone as soon as it becomes available. A final question, and then I'll give everybody an opportunity to wrap up, and then we can engage each other informally. And I guess this question may be more appropriate to me. Any plans to overhaul the tax laws implemented during the illegitimate presidency, not my words, illegitimate presidency, because they have been detrimental to working families in the middle class? One, I agree with whoever wrote that question. Certainly, we have lived through the most corrupt presidency in American history. And thank God he's gone. Thank God he's gone. Now, we got rid of Trump, but we still have to deal with Trumpism. And we're not going to let them take our democracy away from us. In terms of the tax situation, what's extraordinary is that in 2017, the Republicans, who were then in the majority, passed what we refer to as the GOP tax scam. That was their so-called tax reform legislation. The problem with it is that 83% of the benefits went to the wealthiest 1% in America. That ain't right. And so it's something that needs to be dealt with, and we are dealing with it. In order to pass a tax bill where such an extraordinary amount went to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, as I've publicly sometimes said, to subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless, 83% of the benefits going to the wealthiest 1%, which cannot be justified, saddling us with $2 trillion worth of debt. Part of the manner in which that was done is that they took away the ability for people in states like New York to deduct the full amount of the state and local taxes that you pay, as well as the property taxes. It used to be largely unlimited. They put a $10,000 cap on that. That's hurt a lot of middle class folks. And so in the reconciliation bill that we're working on, the Senate just sent over the framework along with the infrastructure bill. But in the reconciliation bill that was sent over to us, that we'll work on over the next few weeks, we are going to do everything possible to repeal the cap that was put on your ability to deduct state and local taxes that you pay here in New York. And that should result in a substantial amount of tax savings for a significant number of New Yorkers. The other thing that, of course, we did as it relates to the tax issue is we passed one of the largest tax cuts for families with children in American history in the form of the Enhanced and Expanded Child Tax Credit, which now people are receiving in our community. Over 100,000 are eligible. And across the country, for every child that you may have who is 5 years or under, you are receiving a monthly tax payment of $300 per child per month. That started on July 15th. And you'll get a check on August 15th, and then September 15th, and then October 15th, and November 15th, and December 15th. And the same applies to children between 6 and 17. You'll receive $250 per child every month on the 15th who fall into that category. Now, because we did that initially in reconciliation, we could only do it for the balance of the calendar year, which is why it will expire on December 31st. But we are committed to extending it and making the child tax credit payments permanent. That's something we support in this community. And because the eligibility range is the same eligibility range connected to the receipt of the direct payment survival checks that hopefully everyone who is eligible has received, the $1,400 most recently, it applies to low-income families, working families, and middle-class families with children. That's why we're committed to keeping it going. And so I want to give our panelists an opportunity just to sum up, and maybe if they can just emphasize in their closing remarks again, the extraordinary amount of programs and benefits that are available to the community that we want to make sure the community takes advantage of. And I'll start with Guillermo, and please give my best regards to the commissioner who I had the opportunity to work closely with when we were in Albany together, and she continues to do an amazing job.
Thank you again. So I really, the one thing that I heard from the other panelists that really resounded with me is that it's not just about seniors attending here, it's if you know a senior. And many seniors, especially now with the pandemic, have been isolated. So whatever you can do to reach out to a senior, even if it's just to talk to them, but especially if they have a need that you're aware of, or that you become aware of, you should take advantage of all the different services that you've heard today. With respect to the New York City Department for the Aging, you can reach us at 212-AGING-NYC, and then you can be directed to services that are available or other help that we are familiar with. So I really want to thank you and thank the Congress member for the opportunity to speak to you today. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me and having us here today. As far as HRA is concerned, I'd have a couple of words. Apply, apply, apply. We have money for SNAP. We have money for one-shot deal for utilities. We have a lot of, and always apply. Do not sit home and self-disqualify. Do not sit home and say, I don't think I qualify for this. I don't think I qualify for that. Let HRA tell you you do not qualify. Don't worry about what anybody said they did and their friend didn't get it. And you apply for yourself and let HRA tell you that you don't qualify. Just make sure, I want to close with this. When it comes to HRA, whatever our program is, Don't self-disqualify. Make sure you apply for yourself. Thank you.
Before I make just my final comment, I'll make one correction. I mentioned one benefit program, Enhanced Star. I said the income level was $88,000. It's actually $90,550. So if you thought you missed out for a few $1,000s, it's actually $90,550. I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Charles said. By all means, apply to these. Even if you think you might qualify, please apply. To find out more information about our programs, go to our website. Simply type in NYCDOF. It'll bring the website up to the top of your browser. And you can call 311. Ask to speak to a property tax expert or a rent freeze customer service person between the hours of 8:30 and 4, and they can go into detail in discussing these things with you. Your local elected officials can help, and many community-based organizations can do that as well. So thank you, and by all means, apply.
I feel like we're all just going to be repeating that. Rent relief is there. It's so important. If you know anyone who has struggled who's a renter, who's struggled over the last year, you know, a small landlord who has tenants in their building who haven't been able to pay, let them know about this program. The state is going to send out billions of dollars in rent relief. Let's not leave $1 on the table. Let's get to everyone who needs help. Thanks.
We know how hard New York City was hit by this virus, and that's why we, as well as everyone else here, wants to make sure that everybody who thinks they may be eligible to apply, please visit our table on your way out, grab one of our information sheets, tell your family, your friends, your community. We want to make sure that everybody can get this assistance. If you or someone you know is having trouble with their application, please visit our hub site at Medgar Evers College and get some technical assistance on your application. Thank you.
Well, thank you again to our tremendous panelists. And the operative word from the Help is Here Senior Town Hall meeting is what? Apply. Apply and apply. We want to make sure that all of these benefits are experienced and felt in our community. We've got a tremendous array of people who can assist and direct you in that regard. And also, as I mentioned in the back, of course, we've got Black Vets for Social Justice, Brooklyn Neighborhood Services, and you want to determine if you have some unclaimed funds, if you have some money owed to you, which is part of that $9 billion in unclaimed money for New Yorkers. That's Tom DiNapoli's office right in the back. We're working hard to get things done. It's an honor for me to represent the 8th Congressional District in New York, otherwise known as the People's Republic of Brooklyn, and to be right here in the heart of Central Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant. We got the American Rescue Plan done. We're going to get the infrastructure bill done. Shout out to Local 79 again. We're going to make sure we create those good paying jobs in our community. We're going to invest in home care and long-term care and health care, dramatically lower the high price of life-saving prescription drugs. President Biden was on talking about that earlier today. And we're also going to deal with the continuing attacks on our democracy. And so when we go back to Washington, we've been called back the week of August 23rd. One of the top priorities for us is we are going to pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act and end the era of voter suppression in America once and for all. God bless you, God bless Bedford-Stuyvesant, and God bless the United States of America.